Welcome to the CRO race. A spectacular day lies ahead, and in a country with so much beauty, it's kind of hard to quantify what we're going to deal with today. Just wait till you see it. It's Biograd Namoro to Nevolja today. We have a couple of climbs along the way that are categorized, but let me tell you, there are some real spike surprises as well, and one coming a little bit late on, which I think will possibly define the day. Let's see. This is our starting point, the old town at Biograd Namoro. Beautiful it is. We'll dwell on it in a short while, but in the first instance, let's check out what happened yesterday, shall we, to open us up in this great race. Well, they dropped the flag, destination cinch. It certainly wasn't a cinch to get into the breakaway. It was quite a battle, but we had 5 that settled down ultimately. And indeed, they shared the fortunes of the day between them. The King of the Mountains jersey was the one that was most coveted, I think. That being a near certainty for somebody within the breakaway. And sure enough, it fell to Sukhran from ATT Investments. Well, the break was finally caught after just having a little bit of a skirmish amongst itself, quite frankly. And we drove on towards the line. Sadly, we were to have a bit of a bump towards the end. I won't be dwelling on that, but Mohoric was caught out, was 49 seconds adrift at the end. And so with him missing, it was a more, I guess, open sprint. If you discount, of course, Eli Viviani, who's on spectacular form. Lund pushed him hard for DSM up the centre. Fast finishing as well was Stewart from Jayco. Alexander Kristoff, after being dropped off in a perfect position, could not capitalise, and it just seemed to go backwards a little bit towards the end to finish in 3rd place. Eurocometa Lonardi rounding out the top 5, but Viviani getting his first win of the season. That'll be extremely welcome. And as a result, he leads this race and wears the coveted red jersey, so watch his shoulders go from black and...
Yeah, I feel really lighter now, you know. 1 year is a long wait for a sprinter, but this year I definitely have a good year with placement. I always be there. So I'm really in good shape after a good period from Hamburg towards now. So yeah, coming straight away from Europeans, feel a little bit not good in the start, but then I feel super good. The guys do a super lead out, and yeah, like that I can win some races.
He can, and he did. Well, the incident that bedeviled us was 6 kilometres from the line, and as a result, because it was out of the 3K safety zone, it meant that Mate Mohoric, who was caught up in it, unfortunately shipped 48 seconds by the end of the day. Lucky for a few who unclipped. I think it was Luke Rowe that just got away with it. They'd been calling for Ethan Hayter to move up. He himself managed to avoid trouble on the right-hand side of the road, stayed upright, but Mohoric, well, he did have some help. Mashashuk dropped back for him, but it was a fruitless task, so close to the finish with everyone else pacing up, indeed going for the sprint, which he should have been involved with. He is our defending champion, and I've got a feeling that he will be very much to the fore today, and the terrain kind of favours the sort of rider that he most certainly is. So, strap yourselves in. This is going to be a selective sprint finish by my calculations. However, I say selective. It could have a great group of hopefuls who want to go strongly towards the end. Well, we do have a breakaway. It's up the road. 4 riders have managed to extricate themselves quite early, only 3 kilometres into what is quite a short day. Just 115 kilometres, in fact, the shortest stage of this race. And there's the profile. We're playing with the coast with all these spectacular islands. No wonder it's a favour destination for those who enjoy sailing and the like. And this is what we're dealing with as we head to Nevolja. We have a circuit towards the end. Wind's blowing up a little bit today as well, about 19 kilometres per hour, we're hearing. And as a result, it might get a little bit gusty on some of the open reaches down towards the coast. There's the man who swapped a black shoulder and a golfing diamond shoulder for the all-red of our leader. It is Eli Viviani, also leads the points, of course, but that is being carried on his behalf today by second place Lund, who did a good job yesterday. So He'll be in the blue points jersey. The green King of the Mountains came from our breakaway. Well, there is our break formation a little bit earlier on, or at least the attempted skirmish to be there. There was a few teams that missed out yesterday and would very much have liked to have been involved. Maloya push bikes were one of those in their rather fetching all-in pizza. It's a question of stagione, isn't it? I can't quite decide what flavour it is, but there's a bit of artichoke in there somewhere. So it was busy at the top of the day as we left the Roman Forum and the Church of St. Donatus. I almost said donuts, but I didn't. So let's not dwell on it. Destination today, a beautiful coastline which we're going to enjoy. I think this is the Forum. You can see bits of it on the right-hand side there. Obviously, some of those old hewn rocks got nicked, which architects were given to doing, quite frankly. Here's your intermediate sprint. Looks like a cheeky one for Shuran, who came through on that first sprint. They come thick and fast today, the action points. That's the first of our intermediate sprints. Then we'll have a climb before you know it. Kashbar taking the first of them, I beg your pardon. Don't know who I attributed it to, but there you go. In fact, I'm looking at yesterday's. It was Kashbar, so I got the team right. Who takes our first intermediate sprint of the day. Is that Dr. Martin's Dalmatia? I don't think so. You join us live. We've got 84.8 kilometres to go, which is most of the day. And indeed, most of the action is still to come, which is good news. It's a very short day today. Only 115 kilometres in total. In fact, just a little bit shy of that by 500 metres. You get the idea. No surprise to see that it is Ineos Grenadiers that are doing most of the policing of our breakaway. Now, the gap went up to, it's been holding steady, I should say, around about a minute and 50 for quite some time. And so it looks like that's going to be moderated throughout the run today. It's not overly committed, I must say. Many of you are saying I should be, but we won't dwell on that. It's a beautiful day again, and we'll have some beautiful scenery to show you throughout the day. And I guess a lot of teams will be thinking about what went wrong and what went right yesterday. We'll be dwelling on that as well, in the good company, of course, of Philippa York. Pippa, it's another wonderful day to reach for the bike.
It is a lovely day again. Down by the seaside, a nice gentle breeze, not too stressed. Almost a day off for Bahrain after the accident of Matej Mohoric yesterday, who did start the race as the big favourite, having won last year and been in such good condition. But unfortunately, that crash with 7 kilometres to go yesterday has put him in a kind of difficult position. So all changed for Bahrain and for Mohoric to look at their tactics for the rest of the week.
I think so. It's going to be a difficult one. Here are those islands and inlets that I was telling you about. I mean, you're going to need a boat to get to them. There's no such thing as vaporettos here. I mean, you can pay a fisherman to take you over. The question is, will he come and get you at the end of the day? It happened to me. We'll get to the breakaway in just a second. But yeah, it happened to me. I hired I asked a fisherman to take me over to an island. And I said, how am I going to get back? Because I thought he was going to wait while I just had a quick walk. And he said, no, all you have to do is come to the jetty and just wave your T-shirt. After about an hour of waving, somebody else came and saved me. I don't know, maybe it was my T-shirt. Maybe it was the sight of me without a T-shirt. Who knows? This is our breakaway. It's more sensible. Jan Kaspar is up here. We also have, that was Orinkov Alvarez. Marvin Hammerschmidt. We also have Rafael Hammerschmidt. I believe they're related, but you just never know. Anza Skok is here from Ljubljana. Gusto Zantic they're in the mustard and black. You'll see it. Christian Koren as well from Adri Mobil. And we have Jan Kaspar from ATT Investments. Two of those pretty strong riders, to be honest, to be in a breakaway. They're being given a reasonable amount of respect. Here's your weather conditions. Only 9 kilometres an hour and a possibility of rain at 43%. I think that's humidity, not chance of rain, because I've got chance of rain today 0. But anyway, there's our leader, Eli Viviani. There was a few riders yesterday, Pippa, that will be disappointed with the way it went, but really showed some spirit as likewise. There was a few just outside the top 10 that will be thinking today's parkour potentially may actually suit them better.
Yes, exactly. I imagine today all those riders, like we see here, number 11, Ethan Hayter, who kind of strolled along at the back of the peloton almost all day and then got caught up in that crash, which eliminated himself and Matej Mohoric from the final. I mean, they have to pay better attention today. But just looking back at the way the sprint went yesterday, as you pointed out at the just after the finish, Carlton, only really Campbell Stewart of Jaco Alula gained any places. Everybody else kind of held position as Connor Swift pulled over as a lead-up man for Elia Viviani, and everybody kind of stayed in position. And Campbell Stewart came from about eight places back, so he closed 15 metres in that last 200 metres. So he has to start in a better position to give himself a chance of taking the victory.
I would love to see it, actually. He was extremely strong finishing, as you mentioned. But to be honest, I actually thought he looked the quickest out there. He was just in bad position. Now, he's often used as a lead-out man himself, and you have to reboot occasionally when you're given the big chance. Instinctively, lead-out men go early. He left it too late. I think he probably dialed into his head, I've got to go late, I've got to go late. And in the end, he went too late. It's a finessing thing, isn't it, for him? And perhaps he might get it right today.
Well, hopefully for Jaco that he gets it right. Maybe, as you mentioned, Robbie McEwen phoned him up and gave him a few tips. You would hope so. But like you say, quite often when you're used to being in that position of placing your main sprinter for that final dash inside the 200 metres, you're not really sure of what you're how to negotiate that up until when the sprint launches, because you're usually involved in the part that's just 500 metres to go and you're well inside the kilometre up until that final sprint. So maybe hopefully Robbie McEwen's gave him a few tips.
I think he will have done. He's got good support as well with Lucas Postelberger, the man who always delivers, and indeed Amund Grondahl Jansen. Sorry, I just have to say that when I speak about the postman. But let's see. The hill is the problem at the end of today, and we'll be talking about the hill in darkened terms the closer we get to it. Pippa, after the second of our categorised climbs, we still haven't dealt with the first of them yet, there is a reach of around about 20 kilometres, and in the middle of that, with about 15 k's to go from the line, we have an uncategorised test at 1,600 metres, but 7%. That's just nasty.
Yes, that will be nasty. It's the kind of thing you get in Irish races.
Well, that's Sean Kelly. Let's see if anyone's hired some sheep. Sean Kelly once said to me, I don't know whether he was fibbing or not, he said, I said, how do you manage to win the hamper races all the time? He said, well, 50 euros will buy you a herd of sheep. Win it every time from a breakaway. So basically he gets up the road and then somebody opens a gate. The sheep come onto the road and indeed the peloton's held up just a little bit. I think he was pulling my leg, but there was a twinkle in his eye. You never know without Sean. But hey, not Sean the sheep.
Yeah, thinking about that, 1.5 kilometre at 7%, it is a kind of typical Belgian idea. So I know from having watched the last stage of the Tour of Slovenia, they had a kind of similar thing then in the final, and Matej Mohoric attacked over that and went to the finish. I can't remember with one other rider. But yeah, now that he's got largely a bit of time to make up, I can imagine that would be a launch pad for him, or potentially somewhere to kind of split the race up.
Definitely. And if Eli Viviani, you heard his relief when we were speaking to him after yesterday, that the end of the season, he's got his first win of the season. Sometimes that can spur you on, quite frankly. It did the case a couple of years ago with Arnaud Demare, I think, won his very last race of the season. So there's a few more stages for Viviani to stretch his legs, and this will be one of them. He's going to be well supported today. I would have said that today's stage would be better for Ethan Hayter. It depends on the mood of Ethan, quite frankly, and whether he wants to drag Eli Viviani up that final ramp. Because basically they're going to have to do a sprinting climb for 1,600 metres to hold on to Matej Mohoric. As there is some slippage room because Mohoric is 48 seconds down, so Viviani could be staying in the leader's jersey and getting a lesser position, but he's only interested in stage wins. So if the battle plan is indeed further down the road, Ethan Hayter is possibly the better bet. So that means I think the favour might switch today between Hayter and Viviani. But yeah, he can also go over that final climb along with Matej Mohoric and take the race almost by default. But Mohoric will get himself kind of further up the pecking order, I think, which he needs to do almost constantly. So there's some shenanigans to go on with, but for the time being, we're in a holding pattern of 2 minutes, and it's Ineos Grenadiers who are honouring the jersey, and I can't really describe it as a chase, to be fair.
No, it's very much like yesterday, where we just saw one block of colour at the front, and then the next block, and then the next block. So it's going to be like this for a while, and Luke Rowe likes this kind of thing, along with Luke Plack.
Well, he does, got the sun on his back as well. Yesterday, the radio of Ineos Grenadiers got very well used. I think Luke Rowe's radio probably had a massive thumbprint pushed into the metal because, quite frankly, he was asking Ethan Hayter, "Where are you, mate?" And he wasn't anywhere to be seen. He was actually at the back and I imagine, got hampered by the crash that, of course, very much affected the run of Matej Mohoric, and potentially will do later into the race. Let's see if he can make amends for it over the next coming days. This is the sort of thing we're dealing with today. Isn't that lovely?
All we need is a love. So that would be Love Island, and I think there's a hotel they have there on a television program. Oh
yeah, well, that's the place. I remember the show. Yes, Golezniak is the place. It's the island of love, as you could possibly imagine. What else would you call it? I can think of things, but I'm not going to say. It's privately owned. Get off my Love Island. There you go. It contains only wild plants and trees. The island's unusual shape was first recorded in the 19th century. I guess they didn't have aircraft before then and didn't really realise what shape it was. Oh no, it was Napoleon's cartographer. There you go. Who else? Who included it in his 1806 Atlas of the Dalmatian Coast. I know you've probably got a copy at home, but anyway. The island was highlighted on Google Earth in February 2009, which brought the island to the worldwide attention as the Island of Love. There we are. That's not really telling us that much about it. There's two what appear to be dirty great big airstrips there, but I imagine it's something Romanesque. And they didn't have aircraft that I'm aware of. Minute and 55, that's your gap, as we're sort of looking tantalisingly at the high ground here. Now we're going to play with a bit of it. There's a very large kind of plateau, escarpment some might say, that we will nudge towards, and so we'll zigzag around it. Tomorrow we've got a lot more climbing. In fact, I think tomorrow is the climbiest day. It's not a word that exists, but we're going to roll with it. That's to Pattaya. And then, of course, we've got the big peak on Friday. So in terms of altitude gain, the next couple of days are going to be quite severe. Today's not. But as you look along the coast here, you see that little lumplet that's almost triangular shaped. That's the sort of thing we're going to be dealing with late on. And I think it's going to define the day. Before we get there, once we've got pictures back from downstairs, and here we are, thank goodness. Microwave link has been nailed back together. Luke Plapp still plying his trade. Now yesterday, DSM Firmenich were running, of course, for Tobias Lund, who starts as one of the pre-race favourites. And he went reasonably strongly, in fact, runners-up behind Eli Viviani, and that bodes well for him and for DSM later in this race. He looked strong, didn't he?
He did look strong, and he started in the perfect position. It's just that he can run out of road. It's hard to say whether he got about halfway up coming past Viviani and kind of got stuck there. Then as Viviani just died a little bit, he got closer, but in the end, Viviani had a wheel in front of him, and he kind of ran out of road.
He did, and I think he's going to have more trouble today because Mohoric, even if Mohoric can't win this race after 48 seconds lost yesterday, and that sort of time can be made up in the higher ground where Mohoric will thrive. He's more of a battler, and today demands that, I think, because of the peak that we've got 15 k's from home. Better be impressive now we're bigging it up. But anyway, 1.6 kilometres at 7% it's likely to be. And I think that's Tobias Lund's problem, is that yesterday I think suited him more than today. So let's have a look, shall we? He needs to as well have the confidence to go for it himself and maybe not look for other wheels, because you can spend a lot of nervous energy, can't you, Pippa, looking for others to follow when actually you've got the strength to do it yourself on occasion.
Yeah, there was a lot of it was quite hectic yesterday's sprint. There was a lot of looking around to see who'd survived that crash inside this last 7 kilometres. That certainly disrupted a lot of teams, and they didn't really get organised, and only Ineos kind of took it up because they were fortunate enough to be on the right side of the road when the crash happened. Although it did happen in the middle, they didn't have any real casualties from that, and they had their lead-out train kind of parked on the right-hand side of the road, and that happened in the middle. So they survived that incident really well, and then they were able to kind of dominate the lead into the sprint, and especially inside that final kilometre where they put Connor Swift on the front, and he strung everything out.
Just back to our breakaway, we saw Andrzej Skok of Ljubljana Gusto Santic, the 23-year-old. Now, he's detailed as a time trialist, and quite often when you get young riders, they are, of course, nearly all detailed as time trialists, because how else are they going to display themselves? And it's usually TTs on a shut-down section of the A11. You get the idea. And so their real prowess usually shows deeper into their career. He's just turned 23 10 days ago, so he's still very much a youngster. However, I do note that he finished third in the Slovenian time trial championships, of which were taken, of course, by Tadej Pogačar. And he actually beat some very, very good time trialists. Of course, why would Slovenia not have good time trialists? When you see what Tadej Pogačar can do. But yeah, he put a lot of very good time trialists behind him, and here he is, number 144. So of this breakaway, he's a man who can get himself into a decent position, and as all time trialists do, he can park pain. And it was not a purist time trial, but it kind of looked a bit like today, the Nationals. And so let's see how he goes, shall we? Here he is on the front. Here's your man. And he's just taken a feed, so he's clearly in a motivated mood. Sharing this breakaway with him, number 106, that's Christian Corren, and a rider that some of you may well be familiar with. He's been around the block probably more times than many, and reminded ourselves of his greatness by winning the Nationals last season. In fact, was it gifted to him? Let's have a look. Govetska finished behind him. Luka Mezgec was in there. So yeah, there was a few notables missing, but nonetheless, that was pretty handy. So he's 36 years of age, so the opposite end of, if you will, his career spectrum. But nonetheless, he's up the road, and we're happy to have him here. Don't forget that at the moment we have the Tour of Langkawi rocking and rolling for you. 72 kilometres to go of this stage 2, and we're kind of in a holding pattern, pretty much like it was yesterday. I'm waiting for a day of brutality. We'll get one tomorrow. We might well get one as soon as we start climbing here. Such a short stage, Pippa, often draws out a bit of ambition from long range. Are we going to get that today? Because it was not exactly a difficult one yesterday either.
No, it wasn't too difficult yesterday. The only upset, as we keep going back to, is the crash inside that last 10 kilometres. Just looking at the attitude of the peloton, it looks very like yesterday, where it's kind of stroll along. Everybody's accepted that what's going to happen with this 4-man break is they're going to get caught like the 5-man break yesterday, kind of falling apart on their, after they've kind of knocked lumps about each other for a while. And it'll be another sprint, whether it's a sprint from a small group or it's a bunch sprint. We'll have to see how the hidden climb at 15 kilometres to go is what happens there.
Now that, to me, looks like a very wealthy person's yacht, as opposed to a no idea what flag it's carrying on the back, but we'll investigate. Yes, there's some rather spectacular inlets here, and a lot of them have been used by the super rich to sort of house their floating palaces. You can actually come here, you see a lot of tourist boats as well, and no surprise why. Because it's so gorgeous, and we'll be seeing a few places along the way, not least Zadar. Now, Zadar was a finish line, I think, a few years ago, not last year, the year before, where we went onto the island, and there's some real there was a sequence as we went around the outside of it. The town planners had their fun, city engineers creating lots of 90-degree turns, and we had a whole sequence of them to actually get to the finish line. It was very sketchy, but it was a beautiful finish. We're not visiting this time by, which is a shame. We're sailing by it, so you'll have another look. Matti Mohoric drawing the eye, and where's number one? He's our defending champion. This day is of big importance to him, just to kind of make amends for a slip-up yesterday. He's clearly targeted this race as a great way to finish his season, and he will have been mightily disappointed. Even if he can't win the race, he'll want to take a stage, and today's probably his best chance, I'd have thought, Pippa.
Yeah, you'd imagine so. He was lucky, actually, in that crash yesterday. Yep. That he was the first. So it was caused by, looked like an Iola Cometa rider touched him in front, and he was first to fall. And Mohoric was actually lucky to land on the rider that fell first.
I guess the size of the rider will indeed govern just how comfortable your landing was.
Yeah, he was kind of lucky that the rider fell in front of him, and it looked like from watching it over, he first landed on the other rider's bike, and then he kind of bounced onto the rider, and then he stood up, but his bike had went, I think, about 15 meters further down the road. So I think most of his time was walking to retrieve his machine, and the annoyance of having to put the chain back on.
When you see these things in real time, Pippa, having experienced it yourself, do you start to see them in that slow motion that the riders themselves will have experienced it at? Your brain kind of speeds up, and you go into a Flickr book and see every element of the accident?
No.
I was really hoping you were going to say yes then.
No, you have to. You cannot. It's a bit like crash investigation. You see how the rider fell. So the rider touched I think it was a Jayco Euler rider, touched the Jayco rider in front of him, who was on his left. So that means he fell kind of over the machine of the Jayco machine, and then the kind of dynamics of how he fell, and then how the other riders kind of hit the bike, got thrown off, landed on the rider that was already sliding on the ground. So a little bit less injured. When that actually happens to you, you're aware that you're going to fall, and you see a number of things, like you say, in slow motion. But the most kind of important thing is when you go up, is, have I got holes in me? And then if you haven't got holes in you that are too bad, then you think, right, is my bike working? Do I need a bike? You're not really concerned this is going to sound really selfish. You're not really concerned about anybody else who's been hurt.
Makes sense.
And then the first thing is think, right, does my bike work? If it doesn't, you hand up for the mechanic to change bikes, and if not, you get back on and deal with the consequences.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I've noted that young riders the beginning of their career, check the bike first, and then they check themselves out. It's almost like that's the priority. And the more wily riders, those with a bit more experience, definitely check themselves out first. But here is our breakaway. Now let's do them the honour, shall we, of going through them. This is not a bad breakaway. As I say, a good mix of strength and experience. Christian Corren from Adri Mobil. That is he number 106. He's on the front at the moment. Very lively. Won the Grand Prix Camaiore a few years ago. Well, actually quite a few years ago these days. But national champion of Slovenia back in 2022. I think that was almost up there with his biggest wins. He's done things in Picardy and Gran Primero as well. The Bruno Begoli, I remember calling that race when Valerio Conti won, and Christian Corren was heartbroken not to have got up there. Ilnur Zakarin, sweet, remember him?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was also very, very busy that day to Monte Velho. And that was a very, very peaky day. So Christian Corren will have no fear about today. And he's a good all-rounder. Does a bit of everything.
Yeah, the thing is, he was at World Tour level before in 2010, so he was at Liquigas, then Cannondale. And he's only just left kind of Bahrain 2 years ago and ended up at Adri Mobil. So he's definitely got the most experience at this kind of level. So hopefully be imparting that knowledge to his companions.
Well, I think he might well be keeping much of it to himself. Let's see. Because he's going to believe that this day, without being too much of a stretch, let's just say I think he'll be the last man surviving here. He was teammate of Peter Sagan back in the day. Peter Sagan, I think, signed up for Liquigas 2011. I remember him still being very much a young man and annoying the hell out of people like...
everybody.
Yeah. He did, actually.
Yes.
Even within his own team. Vincenzo Nibali was particularly irked by Sagan's antics. And I imagine Christian Corren was as well, because Christian Corren took his leave soon after.
Well, yeah, the thing with that is when somebody like Peter Sagan comes along and makes it all look so easy and much fun, and there's a kind of joy to them, while you're somebody like Vincenzo Nibali who has to take things seriously because he's a GC rider, and it's at that stage it was a lot more committed in terms of how serious you had to be. And somebody like Peter Sagan comes along and is pulling wheelies and making faces, and he when he wins races he's doing the Hulk and things like that. I can imagine if you're a kind of serious person, it would be really annoying.
Absolutely. Well, he's got a very nice smiley picture as Christian Corren on his profile, which you can find on Pro Cycling Stats. I always like to give the boys at Pro Cycling Stats a bit of an up. They do work very hard at making sure that the data is where it needs to be for us. We also have Marvin Hamajide racing here, number 135 in the green. There he is. And let's check him out, shall we? He's got a bit of a sprint on him. Been sort of Eastern Bloc races are where he's thrived, but usually in the support of others, I must say. And I feel like he's possibly a bit outclassed by those who are around him. So he's done well in Albania and Serbia and the like. And Zegeland, I note. Well, we're dwelling on the Croatian champion, as I'm sure you can imagine why, as he just goes for the back pocket here. It's not that dissimilar from the British champ's jersey, I must admit, save for the checkerboard, which is a fetching addition in this part of the world. 60 kilometres per hour zone, no chance of breaking that today, I wouldn't have thought. And once again, we just sail down the coast and give you a little look. Bit of picture breakup today, nothing serious, and everyone absolutely solidly together. I didn't get any news on anyone lost, did you, Pippa, from yesterday's crash?
There have been two people. Max Dens of Maloya pushbikes didn't finish, and during the stage Stefan Kovar abandoned as well from Hinko Adriatics.
Yes, I believe that was with illness, wasn't it?
So we lost one during the stage.
And one in advance.
And one in that final crash. I don't think he didn't finish. Danish didn't finish, so he was obviously quite badly hurt there.
Well, I hope he's okay. And looking back down the line here, Jayco yesterday, they put one man on the front, just going through Indian Grenadiers team. It's strong. And in fact, there's virtually no weakness. And while we are dwelling on it, certain Mr. Sheffield, my hometown, so I'll naturally be rooting for him. But yeah, he comes from slightly further away, does our Magnus. In fact, Pittsford in the United States as our Croatian champion. We'll be seeing more of him and his impeccably trimmed beard later on. However, Magnus Sheffield today doesn't have a kick on him, so unfortunately, if he does come to the line with Mate Mohoric, he might find himself a bit outclassed when it comes to a sprint. Ethan Hayter, I think, would probably be the better bet. However, Magnus Sheffield is the sort of person who can go very, very long. He's a good time trialist. He's also a good climber. So if you're looking for a surprise from Ineos Grenadiers, in fact, if they were to let somebody off the leash, someone like Magnus Sheffield would be absolutely ideal. There's plenty of others within their team. In fact, I marked them up, and I can't see a weak link. The only person who's not going to go potentially for a win is Luke Rowe, because he's just such a master at looking after everybody else. So he generally tends to do a lot of work, even if it's just burning nervous energy, in marshalling the entire team and making sure they're brought to success. He was busy shouting down the radio at Ethan Hayter yesterday. In the end, they recalibrated and won with Viviani. It's not a bad thing if you've got those many options, is it?
No, when you look at the Ineos lineup here, there aren't any weak riders in there at all. I think when they came here, they'd probably be looking at Magnus Sheffield being their GC hope.
Yep.
Just because he's ridiculously strong almost everywhere. And as you said, if he finds himself in a break, well, now that they have the race lead with Viviani, he can just decide if he's going to work or not, because he's defending the jersey, an excuse or reason. But, you know, so that may occur. You know, for the advantage that Ineos have got now is that with the race lead, they'll be on the front naturally going into the climbs. So it gives Viviani a bit of sliding room.
My view of the finale today with this, we're 50 kilometres from... Oh, hello. Here's your King of the Mountains now, with such a narrow lead at the top. Oh, that was a nice throw. And it is Rinkhoff Adva that have gone for it. So Marvin Hammerschmidt is indeed opening his account here. Well, there's a couple of categorised climbs. There were more yesterday, so at least if he thinks he's going to get himself up in the breakaway, more often than not, then, you know, he's assembling his right to fight within that competition. So Hammerschmidt takes the first of our King of the Mountains. We'll have another one later on. 3 sprints today. In fact, the next intermediate sprint's going to kind of come as a like ground rush, really. It'll be with us before you know it. In fact, this day, I think, will skittle away quite nicely because of the geography that we're dealing with. They've evenly spaced all of those action points for us. Well, it was a good old battle. I like that. They've now got to make friends and get on with the job of being in the breakaway, Pippa.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a swerve between them there to, I don't know how you could say that, to kind of intimidate each other, but it doesn't work.
No, didn't quite work. We saw yesterday some real naughtiness in the intermediate sprints, some real cutting moves, but no sanction. Just look at this crest. I mean, somebody gets 50 pence for seeing the water coming over the top here. But it is absolutely beautiful countryside to reach for the bike. And not that much of a gap, despite the pace up. Mind you, it suddenly jumped from 1 minute 18 to 1:30. It can't quite decide what the gap is just for the time being, but what we do know is it's 63 kilometres from home. So, the last couple of hills. Yeah, let's see. Who's going to go on the attack? Well, Mohoric most definitely will. One of them's categorised, one of them is not. We might have a headwind as well by the time we get there. So 1,600 metres at 7% at the last. How significant is that distance with that percentage, Pippa?
That's a really good springboard for anybody who wants to kind of split the race up or think about going solo, because from there to the circuit is about 5 kilometers downhill. So if it's even slightly technical, you can be out of sight, hopefully. And if it really depends on the pace that it happens in going into the climb. If they go in there flat out, then there'll be groups everywhere. If they go in there and it's kind of fight for position, because it turns out it's going to be a small road, then it's a bit more difficult for the race to kind of be blown apart by that. It's been relatively easy as well. You can see by the kind of environment here that Ineos are on the front just riding along, and everybody else is just waiting for the last hour, the last 30 minutes of racing to kind of fully get involved with it.
I think if you're going to be on the front on any day, it's possibly today. Last thing you want is wide open, arrow straight highway. This has got a rise and fall to it, the terrain here, because essentially we're on the coastal road, which is rather nice. Here's how your King of the Mountains went. Hammer Schmidt taking the 3 points ahead of Kashbar and Koren. Yeah, let's just go back to that peak. We will talk about it later on, but just for now, the sort of people who can get over it, of course Matej Mohoric is going to attack it. I think Magnus Sheffield will probably go with him.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not really a climber's thing, you know, that it'll be 3-4 minutes at the most. So it's more kind of peak power thing that's going to happen. So it's not going to be something for like Eddie Dunbar, who's more of a kind of small climber. And it's going to be one of those. Yeah, even Alexander Kristoff could get over it in good condition. So somebody who's won Tour of Flanders. It's that kind of situation.
Well, he's done well in Arctic Race of Norway in the past, which has had a lot of little peaks just before the last. So yeah, don't be surprised if indeed the great Norwegian, the Viking, is up there. I'm going to disagree with you very gently. I've got a feeling that Eddie Dunbar is in that mode where he's got to go for everything, because he had such a disappointing Vuelta. I think instinctively he's going to. And I wouldn't be surprised if Eddie Dunbar is a feature when we get to that little peak at the end. I know, and I completely understand your argument, but a little part of my heart says that Eddie Dunbar is in that, oh, to hell with this kind of mode.
Well, if
he does it.
If we're going to play one against the other, then Oscar Onley is going to go for the top of him. So Oscar Onley is probably a little bit better at positioning himself. With the SM, they're always really very good at that. So if he's got the legs, he's still in the game. So
agreed. So now we think that it's going to be Ethan Hayter. Sorry, Magnus Sheffield, Oscar Onley, Eddie Dunbar, and Matej Mohoric. So we're going to stick with those four. They're going to go for it on that climb. And Eddie Dunbar is going to think, maybe I picked the wrong day. But Eddie will have his day.
That would make him commentating very easy, because we'd have lots to talk about then. and we'd look so intelligent.
That's true, yes, which is it's a shaky concept. Just look at the way that the road here beautifully cuts through the little planted area up ahead of us. It really is gorgeous. You come to some countries and, there's a sign of human hands having graced the landscape. And there are some nations, I count Italy amongst it, and Croatia is certainly another one as well. When we're out in the countryside, it's light touch, but it's absolutely lovely. They use the geography extremely well, is what I'm trying to say. And when you see some of the ancient towns and cities, I guess it was all Roman at one time, they have incorporated the buildings using the natural sort of rise and fall of the terrain, and indeed the shelter therein. And I guess it comes from not modern building practices where you can counteract all kinds of things. You can counteract wetland, you can counteract wind and the like, but there was definitely a cosy what you wanted was dry and cozy, if you could possibly find it, especially in exposed places such as this. And so you get very gentle development in ancient times that seems entirely appropriate for the geography. Gosh, it sounds like a lecture. Minute and 16 is your gap. And they're just coming by some of the maize crops here. They still grow tobacco in these parts. Oh, and there is an aloe vera. Aloe vera. Yes, which if you're very stuck and very thirsty can help you out. But we won't talk about that. 58 kilometres, near enough. So, what do we have? We've got a King of the Mountains coming up with 63 kilometres of the race. No, we've dealt with that, beg your pardon. The next intermediate sprint is 28 k's away. The final climb today is 25 kilometres from home. Then we've got our mystery peak, which is not classified, which we think should be. That's our launch pad at 15 to go. And then at 4.5 from home, we have the passage of the finish line before we complete 4.5 kilometres of a circuit. We'll have about 6 kilometres of circuit, so we join it about a couple of kilometres from what will be the finish line. So don't get befuddled by suddenly seeing the Flamme Rouge and thinking, hang on a minute, there's still 5.5 kilometres of this day remaining. Yes, 4.5 kilometres of solid circuit, so the Flamme Rouge comes with 5.5 to go, first time of asking. Gosh. So, this is not a day where there's going to be that much negativity about leading the chase by the looks of it, Peter.
No, there's not. They're not going to spend hours and hours on the front. There's a couple for the two Lukes, Rowe and Plapp. There'll be 2 hours of solid work, doing the tempo, and then the other guys will take over. But I think for the 4 riders in the escape, they're looking at getting to the next sprint point, where you would imagine that Christian Cormier wants to take the time bonus because he's the best place on GC. He's only at 10 seconds, so he was in the front group yesterday. He's the only one of those 4 that's still actively involved in the GC. So you would imagine he wants to take those seconds and then try and stay in the peloton on the circuit.
Well, he's set about it in an accomplished manner. So let's see if indeed he adds to his tally. Yeah, he could indeed go extraordinarily well. Let's see. He'd have to win it today if he was going to tally up entirely. But yeah, 3 bonus seconds up for grabs. So each of the intermediate sprints, there's 3 today. It does make for busy racing. Luke Rowe was very upset about not going to the Vuelta, and I think quite rightly, to be honest. Boy oh boy did they need him, courtesy of how things panned out. He was ready, he'd been to altitude training, he'd got himself all prepped, and so this is part of him, I guess, using and proving just how useful he is. And yesterday he was treating it like a Grand Tour, just marshalling everybody, haranguing, leading from the front, leading from the back. You get the idea. Look at him on the radio again. He's a man who is in charge and is comfortable in that role. Not many can actually pick that up, and he's been doing it from quite a young age as well.
He certainly has, and he looks like he enjoys it as well. And as you said, he has got something to prove. I don't know if Luke Rose has re-signed for Ineos, but there's a number of riders that haven't, and they've gone through that process. As we see Captain America, Quinn Simmons here.
He could be an outsider for today.
So he could be an outsider. Yeah, but going back to Luke Rowe, he's got something to prove. He didn't get to go to the Vuelta, as you said. He'd prepared for it really well, and he has to show what his worth in these type of races. Otherwise, that natural selection of younger people come along. They might be slightly cheaper. They might be slightly more malleable than Luke Rowe, and that kind of constant churn in the peloton of people retiring and new faces arriving happens.
Well, when Remco Evenepoel signs for Ineos Grenadiers, I think he'd quite like Luke Rowe to be there.
Did you say when?
Yes. There you are. You've heard it here first. Geraint Thomas was interviewed. I saw it on Cycling News actually earlier, just before we came to air. He basically said Evenepoel hates Jumbo-Visma. Jumbo-Visma hate Evenepoel. And so if he's looking for another team, he might well be a good fit.
Perfect.
Yeah, there you go. So got my mind ticking. I was thinking, can you imagine them falling in behind Remco Evenepoel? It might actually suit a recalibration within Ineos Grenadiers if indeed they want to spend some years almost impersonating what Soudal Quickstep have done for such a long time, which is basically go for turn themselves into a bit of a bit more of a classics kind of team, picking up wins all over the place and indeed within Grand Tours as well, because it seems that their days of domination of that mantle has passed over to Jumbo-Visma as far as the Grand Tours are concerned, and UAE Team Emirates of course as well. I mean, many people saying the disaster might be if Evenepoel went to UAE Team Emirates with Tadej Pogačar. I think he's got his own ambitions. He'll probably want a team to back him up entirely, because he's going to feel like he's going to be swamped by Jumbo-Visma quite clearly. I mean, just ask Primož Roglič what he thinks.
I think that whole speculation between Jumbo-Visma and Soudal Quickstep, that smells of the kind of crazy stories you get in transfer season. I can't see that ever happening. Just from the characters involved, the number of people and the level of riders who would be left out or included in certain groups. That looks like one of those stories that somebody says, wouldn't this be a good story?
It might well be, but it's nice to run with it for a bit.
Yeah, the problem with Ineos, going to doing what Quickstep did in the Classics is Jim Ratcliffe is paying for a team to win the Tour de France, which takes roughly 80% of the media coverage and exposure, in cycling. So, he's paying for Tour de France results. He doesn't really care about Milan San Remo and the Worlds.
Minute and 29 is your gap. We've got 53 kilometres of the day remaining. At this pace, it's going to take 2 hours. I'm kind of thinking it's a bit of a blessing. It's a short day today, because I think there'll be a lot of firepower at the end. I hope we don't get any bumps and bruises once again. Today's approach at the end, I guess because we're on a circuit, it's a little bit technical. But it doesn't feel as bad as yesterday in a certain regard. There is a hairpin at 3 kilometres to go. There is a 90-degree right-hander. In fact, the more I'm speaking about this, the more I'm just swallowing my own words. With 1.3 kilometres to go. There's another right-hander. It's like a double phaser, really. Feels like you're on a roundabout, we'll see. With about 900 metres to go. And then it's more or less arrow straight to the line, save for a very late bend. But it's a gentle one, but the best place to be is on the left-hand side of the road. It's a left-hander. So, I can't figure out whether that... It depends on who's left after that final peak that we keep banging on about. Well, I do. Yeah, let's see. We'll see. 51.8, and... It's always like a Ineos protest here. But we're not doing this all on our own. If you want to play the game, come up and help out. And there's a few teams that are prepared to do it, Pippa.
Yeah, there'll be a kind of fight for position now and again, but why would you help such a strong team? They'll look at the lineup and think, well, Luke Roelike's doing this. Luke Plab, they're training him up to do the same thing for the next 10 years. Just leave them to it for a while. Enjoy the countryside while you can before it gets really desperate. You look over to the left, you see the seaside. There's not many races you get to do that.
Well, that is true. I love the mountaineers there. They've just got themselves onto a small mound. But you can be absolutely certain that somebody's going to go just down below, about 2 metres lower, and take that picture up to the sky and say, there you go, K2, conquered. Well, we're not dealing with those kind of mountains today. It's the sort of thing I used to do in Derbyshire, to be honest. But that was a long time ago. This is now. And we have, we're sort of actually skittling along quite nicely. I'm just looking at the surface of the water here now. It's disturbed by a breeze, as you can see, and it looks like it's coming straight towards them at the moment, so a bit of a headwind. So, yeah, I guess some of the power men might actually start thinking, well, if this carries on, it might serve me quite well today. Let's see. Certainly the breakaway will be hampered a little bit by this. Just going to welcome back our wider family. Welcome back. Those of you who've been away, breakaway still out here, but the gap's come down to 1:22. There's a lot of other teams that are just starting to think about it. We've just been looking at the wind-blown water here and the way it's displaying itself. It looks like a headwind that we're dealing with just for the time being. I was expecting a crosswind, to be honest. I might be misreading the wind, but the pace is really stalling, and there's been a sort of an accord by those who are chasing on just for the time being. Well, actually, it looks like a lack of accord right now. Basically, English Grenadiers sat up and said, come on, come and do a little bit of work. We're not going to do this all on our own. We're not going to make the mistakes of some of the other teams yesterday. Well, Bahrain victorious, notably. They did an awful lot of work for not much gain yesterday, didn't they?
Yes, unfortunately they did. I think today they'll be able to sit back and kind of take stock of what's happening and look for some kind of opportunity later on. But they're certainly not going to ride like they did yesterday and then an incident takes out their main men. So they've got kind of a day off for the moment, and they'll just watch what's happening. And as usual, we see Uno X perfectly organised in the middle of the screen. So,
can't help themselves. They often do this. Make a suggestion. Yesterday they were slightly anonymous. Well, less so today. And got to do it for the sponsors, everybody. It looks very barren. It's suggestive of just how hot this place gets during the summer. We're talking about temperatures nudging around the 40s on a regular basis, not just in freak summer conditions that we had this year. And so it is quite rocky. Cue the music. I have the tiger and all that. But yeah, these guys back here have now got a clear sight of those up ahead of them, and I guess this is yet more pressure off. They've just seen them going over to this rather fetching viaduct, and it will be soon time to ponder when you light it up for the finale today. The first of our climbs begins reasonably soon, actually. We've got an intermediate sprint that our breakaway will pace up for reasonably quickly. Let's have a look. What are we about? In fact, we're still 20 k's away from that, so scratch that just for now. Just looking at the tops of the water, it's a crosswind as displayed here by the white horses. Yeah, it's starting to get a bit windier, and on these very exposed sections, that's why there's so much sailing in these parts, you can gather why indeed there's perhaps a little bit of worry here. Let's see. It's blowing up here.
Yeah, the wind was meant to blow in from the west, so we're heading roughly northwest, so it could be a little bit of side wind on this section. Maybe that's why the directors sportifs have said to everybody to pay a bit of attention just in case something happens. And quite often when that kind of information is given out, there's a gradual acceleration as everybody comes to the front and looks at each other and wonders, are you going to accelerate here just because it might put us into difficulty?
There's a lot of tectonic activity around here. You can see from the striations in the earth, and indeed some of the trammels on the rock faces here. All that's laid down horizontally, of course, with sedimentation, and it's kicked up and basically rolled over enormous pieces of rock that we're playing with at the moment. So quite possibly, of course, explanation naturally enough of why this is, I guess, a moderate earthquake zone as well, just like Italy and some of the other places around Turkey, notably, as you well know, we'll be heading to Turkey, in fact, reasonably soon. And yes, recent experience, of course, in an extraordinarily bad way. As the blue jersey, we are getting a sight of it, and yeah, being carried today, the blue jersey for us, Pippa.
Yes, Alexander Christoph. I'm just wondering which one is the blue jersey. It's the points jersey.
Points jersey.
Yes, the points jersey. So that means Tobias Lund is in the Best Young Riders jersey?
I think so, because he actually owns that one, which is why the default fell that way. In fact, I'm just going to double check for you to see who's carrying.
Because normally the points jersey carries more
You would think so.
gravitas than the young
Yes.
rider jersey. So
That's why it befuddled me. So Christoph is in blue, and let's have a look at the young rider classification coming in to you for you right now. So the points classification, Viviani, and it is Tobias Lund, is supposed to be in that jersey,
yeah, so that's
carrying it on behalf of somebody else. That's the point, isn't it? So Lund actually owns out proper the young riders jersey, so he's in the white jersey today, and so the default is that Alexander Kristoff, who's third in the points competition, carries the blue. There we are. Still playing with that terrain.
I just thought it'd been the other way around. Normally the points jersey is the kind of second tier of classification. So he's race
is.
leader, points jersey, climate
but
jersey, young
But
rider.
he doesn't own it, whereas he does own the. He's the best placed young rider, so he is in white because of that. So rather than just being a carrier, he's got the honour of being the best young rider. So it makes, I guess, makes sense. But, so it's Christoph that is in the blue today, which will make him a bit easier to pick out when he wins.
So that's you're going with Alexander Kristoff, are you?
I am. I just like an old boy. I actually think Matti Mohoric will win today because he'll be so spurred on with anger from yesterday. I'd love to see he and Ethan Hayter duking it out. I think if Magnus Sheffield does indeed get up and over, it's going to be too much of a task for him. I think you're absolutely right to point out Onley. I think he's very much going to be there. And DSM are kind of riding as if that's going to be the case. Let's see. It might be Tobias Lund. Who knows? I think the peak, though, would suit Onley a little bit better. That late test that we keep talking about.
Yeah, you would imagine so. It's interesting to see that you can spot Ethan Hayter there on the right in the middle of the Ineos train. So he's not been allowed to surf the wheels like he did yesterday and just kind of hang around the back. So he's been told, right, we've got the race lead. You know, you're going to have to join in with the rest of the team for today.
Yeah, some riders do find a great comfort being back there, and indeed they are accomplished at moving through in a very sort of sinuous manner when the time comes. But you can get caught out, and there was a real danger that Ethan Hayter would be caught out yesterday, as Matti Mohoric was. He got away with it. They're not going to make the same mistake again today, if indeed it was a mistake. Wallace Alois, I keep talking about him, the Venezuelan champion. He's there in the bright yellow. You can see him just almost popping out of the head here of Enzo Linza as he goes back to the car for a quick chat and plenty of bottles. Not quite sure what the jersey record is these days in the time of woolen jerseys. That's when Sean Kelly started. Yeah, you'd be able to get quite a few down there. I have actually seen riders collect in the past, and then all of a sudden they've mistimed it and realised that there's an intermediate sprint coming up, and been jiggling like the Hulk as they go for it. Our breakaway, they made a good fist of this, but they went off quite early. They had designs, of course, not least Christian Corrin, who we're looking at the moment, of picking up bonus seconds because he was only 10 seconds down at the beginning of the day. 10 seconds down on Eli Viviani, and he will take a volt up if he continues to hoover up some of these intermediate points. I don't think he'll be up for the last sprint, so the best you can do is 6 points, 6 bonus seconds, I think, here, Pippa.
Yeah, and I would think the team wanted to try and get that far, so organise the break until it rides to get to that second intermediate sprint, and then he can take some bonus sprints, because back in the cars that will change the running order. So for his team, Adria Mobile, they'll move up in the convoy, and that quite often that could be the objective for the day for that team.
May well be. I don't think we'll get to the third and final sprint, which is only 4.5 kilometres from home, but 2 up there, as you say, it improves the pecking order. And when you line up in the morning, there's a certain
amount of pride comes that you're not right at the back.
You see the teams that are behind you. It's good news. Back on the blower, Luke Rowe. Lost his moustache by the looks of things. Maybe going more aero. Who knows?
I imagine that Luke Rowe's microphone gets more worn out than everybody else's at Ineos.
I think
He does spend a lot of time communicating, but then he's, that is his role. He's the road captain, and he has to impart his experience of how his riders are looking, and from the DS, they might be first car now, but they can't see what's happening at the front of the peloton. So Luke Rowe give bits of information now and again when he spots something useful.
Well, our breakaway is just up the road here by a margin of just over a minute. So they've just zigzagged into our next town, and with 42.8 kilometres of the day remaining, we should be coming towards the, I think we've been over the Most Bridge. It's Pash,
Yeah.
which is our next, the Olive Gardens of Lun. And there's still, remarkably, olives growing here. How nice is that? Normally, olive groves are benetted underneath the olive bushes or trees, and the reason is that they don't want the fruit spoiling on the earth. So there you are. They know how picky you are in Waitrose. Talking generally. Not just talking about you, Pippa.
I'm lucky I don't eat olives. So
Oh, don't you?
I don't like the taste, so
You should try.
I'm spared fighting over them in Waitrose.
Meanwhile, a little bit of a battle. Skirmish, I think you might say. Equipo Kern Farmer, Roger Adria, they had Piana doing a bit of a job yesterday. He was up in the break, which was something of a surprise. But Roger Adria, he's got designs overall. They've got Igor Arieta and Urko Barada as well. Not quite sure what they can offer today, but let's see if Adria has some designs upon it. You can see Little Trek as well. They have Jon Aberastori and Teutenberg. That's Tim Tom to you and me. But I think it'll be for Quinn Simmons today, because he has to start as one of those who could make a nuisance of himself. So watch Captain America late on. I think he will have potentially some options, especially if that select group go off early, and he's the man who can get his head down. He's in much better shape than many people had expected. But let's see. You get different helpers on different duties, but I think Quinn Simmons will probably help himself. I don't think Antoine Talok is... Well, is he? I think Quinn Simmons is their main man.
Yeah, I would agree that Quinn Simmons, the characteristics of this race suit his abilities, so they'll be looking after him for the most of this race.
I think so. And I think today he might have a dig. Let's see. For the moment, it's all speculation because it's kind of a holding pattern. And here we are, coming into Pash. You know, you see these little settlements and you think, what on earth do they do all year? Well, these days, I guess, they harvest the olives and look after the tourists. And with the weather like this, it's a very long season. I mean, we are racing towards October and it's 26 degrees. How
Yes,
lovely.
it makes you wonder why you live in certain places, doesn't it? But then, in the off-season, what do they do there? So, other than pick olives and watch them grow. So, just quite often, the young people that happen to be brought up in these places, they disappear to big towns because there's no real work outside of kind of farming and agriculture or kind of looking after olives. So it's difficult to see how they maintain a young population when there's not really this kind of stimulation that young people really want at that time in their life. Yeah,
they're all headed off to Zagreb, I guess, which is our finishing city. Now, they have indeed stripped out the climb, the famous climb, the climb that I very much enjoy. And it's a shame, actually. It's up to the old town. Now, we have actually finished on this perilous climb. I think Adam Yates actually won at the top of it on a couple of occasions. And then they decided to do the climb but come off it and head back down via the old town with some pretty how can I put this, very focused turns. It collected quite a few riders, and I don't know whether they deemed it a little bit too dangerous. So we'd have some very high-paced descending and then some quite technical turns right at the bottom of the hill. So they've stripped out the hill completely, and I must admit I'm a bit disappointed. Because to me, all races need to have a finale that's familiar. And that very much was to me on the CRO race. Look, it's probably going to be lovely in Zagreb, but it's a Sprinters' Day on Sunday. Not, I don't think, a race-defining day, so we should know our champion before we get there.
I think you have to remember now that insurance costs have gone up considerably, and race organisers have a duty of care to everybody, so it's not just the riders that have to negotiate what you would call a technical descent. It's the motorbikes, the race cars, all the followers, and even for the people standing at the side of the road. If you put in a really sharp corner or something where this looks like there's likely to be an incident, you have to think, well, who's going to stand on that corner? If there's a massive crash and they go into children or somebody at the side of the road, it could be really bad.
We're about 10 kilometres to the next action point of our day, and I'm afraid it's already proving just a little bit wearing. And there, pulling the pin, is Andrzej Skok. He was busy earlier on today, but this is no longer the case. It looks like he's cramping up.
It does. It looks like he was suffering before, just when they were riding through. He looked the least comfortable of the quartet, and now it's become a trio.
Yep, I'm afraid so. Cramp is a danger when you're faced with these temperatures, perhaps unexpectedly, and it all goes down to keeping the salts where they need to be.
Well, consulting a medical friend of mine said not exactly true. It's usually more influenced by your level of hydration and in
electrolytes and the rest.
So you lose a lot more water than you do salt. So when we see riders with kind of white marks, it looks like salt, it's quite often showing they're getting towards dehydrated.
And the thing is that I guess you come to an event such as this and you're thinking to yourself, well, it's in September. You have to be reminded to drink almost constantly, and you hear, I think that's what most radio traffic is, isn't it? Keep the fluids up, make sure you eat. The last thing you need is a knock, either thirst or indeed hunger at the end of the day, and they're taking on supplies right now, and some taking on quite a few.
I think for Andrzej Skok, he was probably slightly above his talent level in that break. He looked like he was suffering before when it was flat. So as soon as it went uphill, he's lost the wheels of his companions. So the day's over for him, unfortunately.
It is. So second intermediate sprint, we're 10 k's away. The breakaway should make it. The trio who are up the road, so that's the 3, 2 and 1 bonus seconds up for grabs. This is not a serious push on through. I think this possibly was just a drift over to collect bags, bottles. Yeah,
there's not much intensity going on at the moment. No. And Ineos want to take back the break before those bonus sprints become available, because that might influence the GC for them. So they're quite happy for it to dangle it a minute or so.
Why not? Quinn Simmons having just a shooting of the breeze, as you will. Looked happy enough. He's going to get serious towards the end of today. Always wonder, you're kind of always analysing the demeanour of riders. And of course it's all down to different personalities. And some can kind of snap to duty whenever they want to. Others, when I see them filled with a bit of levity, I kind of think, oh, it's not his day. It doesn't look worried enough. But Quinn Simmons, we've seen the sort of thing he's done in the past. Tour of Wallonie, of course, went down his way, spectacularly so. He's had good runs on this kind of terrain in Hungary and the like. The San Juan International, of course, went his way as well. And there were some very good riders on hand, and some quick men as well, and some real wrestlers. that he got the better of the American champion. So let's see how he goes, shall we? He is the national champion of the United States. And I've just got a feeling that Quinn Simmons will want to actually display that jersey today. He's got an opportunity to do so, but he is going to have to bite the bullet and basically go long today. There'll be a few others that are thinking pretty much the same. We mentioned Oscar Onley earlier on today. He doesn't have that much of a kick, does the Kelso Comet, but he can climb, and he has got a good wrestling nature to him as well. And, well, you have seen him in action on a number of occasions, not least in this race, actually. I think he was third overall last year, wasn't he? He was.
He was, yes.
Yeah, just double checking.
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
Matthew Mohoric, then certain Jonas Vingegaard, and then young Oscar Onley, you know, so backing up those results that he was having throughout the year.
Indeed. So you've got to pick a platform, and sometimes you don't have that choice. You've got to be good everywhere if you're going to come through. So let's see how Oscar goes today. You certainly picked him out as a possibility to go from range.
Yeah, fellow Scot. So you kind of have to look after your brethren almost.
Who was it? Bill McLaren said they'll be singing down Kelso Way tonight.
That sounds more like a Sean Kelly kind of thing to say.
Yeah, it does. But it was Bill McLaren. I'm not quite sure who he was referring to, but basically Scottish rugby, I think. But yeah, there is Skok has been reabsorbed, leaving 3 up the road at 1:09, and we're about 5 kilometres away from our intermediate sprint. This intermediate sprint is going to have some points up for grabs, and so it might well be that the minor points get hoovered up. They're not extinguished, I don't think, by the trio. Let's see how many are up for offer, shall we, on the intermediates. Oh, it is indeed. It's the 3 and the bonus seconds. Let's just double check on that for you. Yeah, 5, 3 and 1 points, 3, 2 and 1 bonus seconds. So there's nothing left. But this is about positioning the run in, and of course we've got to climb. Then we have a fast approach to another climb, and then it's the circuit, Pippa.
Yeah, there is, and I was checking out the circuit because when we turned right after going through the finish, I thought it might be slightly technical. You know, it might be small road. Had to pay attention, but it's not. You know, it's a kind of gradual climb upwards. It might be slightly exposed at the top. It ought to be a tailwind, so that'll make things more difficult for everybody to hang on when the attacks come. But it's not overly dangerous, and there's nothing really to signal that potential incidents or places to be really careful about. So it's all the same kind of similar road as this. You know, a really nice road. Should be safe for everybody.
We got some excuse me, some salt settling dikes here, as you can see. That's sea salt they're busy making. These are evaporation ponds. Don't have any notes on it, but I know what it is. Oh, there we are. The Solana. The salt of Pag, whatever it is. Yes, so you basically have these ponds in the hot sun. Essentially, they just turn white. You scoop it up, and then you go cooking with it. What could be easier than that? It's a business. You've got to have the land to do it. Sometimes, actually, because of the sulfates, these tanks can look pink, but not in today's light.
So that would be the Carmack. So Solana Pag translate as a drop of seawater or a grain of salt. So quite poetic, really.
Yeah. Gosh. We'll be getting a floppy hat on in a moment and going for the laureate status within cycling laureate. In minute and 6 is our gap as we stand. I'm waiting for this to kick off. I kind of feel like it's a fizzing bomb.
Yeah, it's kind of got that feeling of something might happen, just pay attention just in case. And I think that's what we're seeing in the peloton at the moment. You know, going back to that point about you see certain riders are able to kind of ride along almost sleeping, it seems, you know, quite relaxed, and then suddenly they spark into life in the final of the race. That's one of those things that you have to learn to do is when you're the designated rider, that you have to be relaxed, so you're paying attention up to a certain kind of level, but then race face comes on, you know, the last 40 minutes, half an hour start, and that's when you're fully committed, and that's kind of what distinguishes the sprinters and the GC big race leaders from the kind of, not the also-rans, but the more domesticated riders. So you have to have that point where you suddenly, right, race face on, hands on the bottom of the bars, fully committed, and your level of aggression and attention goes to its maximum.
Well, our breakaway is still making a good fist of this, I must say. Exchanging duties nicely. Little elbow flicked out here from Jan Kaspar. Christian Corren comes through from Adri Mobile. He'll be determined to make this intermediate sprint their own. It's just less than a minute. Their job will essentially be done, to my mind, once we go through this intermediate. That was not exactly the best warning from that car. Could have done with a little bit of a toot. Left-hand side of the road is occupied by the camera bike, I think, and thought he'd just go through a gap that almost wasn't there, but we got away with it. Peloton as wide as it is long at the moment, and this is not because of the intermediate sprint or any points that they might hoover up. There won't be any with 3 riders up the road, but very soon after the intermediate sprint, just a kilometre later, we're climbing. It's 2.4 kilometres long, the second KOM of the day, and it's 5.6% as an average. So we're actually getting to that point now where this day is going to get a little bit draggy, but the pace will probably be higher than it has been throughout. So it's been a long approach to what is action stations for a lot of teams, and there's no smiley faces or chit-chat going on at the moment, is there? A lot of very serious race faces on. No, there's been a bit of, right, go and do some work at the front, you guys, and otherwise we're never going to get to the finish, and that's what we're seeing. It's one of those moments where it's almost as a bit of pride at stake here, where you right, we can go and ride on the front. Okay, Ineos have got the race lead, but we all feel we're just as strong as you guys. You're only in the lead because you had the fastest sprint yesterday. It kind of makes Ineos aware that everybody else is still involved in the race, and the kind of points maybe kind of look like it's going to kind of settle down in between Viviani and Christoph and those guys, whereas the GC is, you know, everybody's still involved. They are, except for Mohoric, who needs to start finding bonuses wherever he can. 10 today would help him, wouldn't it? It certainly would. It would be a start, especially for his morale after you know, losing so much time in that crash yesterday. And we kind of saw it at the finish when he rode off with a kind of disgusted look at the way his luck had been that day. So you know, he will certainly be looking to kind of prove himself and find out where his form is. Because when he was riding back, he was certainly riding strongly, and he was going fast. He was passing riders who kind of sat up or done their work. It's just that he was never, once he got inside that final 5 kilometres, unless the race convoy came and helped him, he was never going to close that kind of that 20-second gap that he found himself with straight away. Agreed. Well, we have lost from our break Andrzej Skok, but we still have here, this is Hammerschmidt, Marvin Hammerschmidt, he with the mullet and the green jersey, just going off your screen. This is the man that really wants this intermediate sprint, Christian Corren from Adri Mobile. And this is AT&T Investments, Jan Kaspar, who is also very much part of this breakaway and has been relaying nicely as part of the powerhouse that is our break today, just 22 years of age. He is a time trialist. He's actually got a bit of a kick on him as well. He'd be a good man in a finale, but unfortunately they're not going to make it all the way, but they will to the intermediate sprint by the looks of things. I don't think there's a heartbreaker behind them to deny our breakaway this opportunity to just gain some more bonus seconds along the way, but they've still got a kilometre to go and they've got 50 seconds. Can't see anyone lighting it up behind, but they want to be in a decent position by the time we get to this categorised peak that's rapidly approaching. Comes just 1 kilometre after the intermediate sprint, and it's from there that we could see a launch pad from 29 k's out. It'll be 28 point something by the time we get to the top of it. And by the time we actually begin, I should say, that climb. Yeah, 27.5 kilometres to go. It evens out with 25 remaining, so 2.4 kilometres at 5.6%, and everyone's very wary of it because they know that it could be the first of those moments in the day that prove pivotal. Let's see. 55 seconds breakaway. They should fight for this. I imagine they possibly will, but the man who's got to be favourite to take it is going to be Corin, and in fact they're not fighting for it by the looks of things. By agreement almost, as he comes to take this intermediate sprint by the looks of things. I don't know whether we've actually rolled over it. That would have been an appropriate place to have it. They've now suddenly got themselves a tailwind. Well, he's looking a bit more twitchy. Maybe it's on the other side of this viaduct. Let's see. What a change of pace.
It is a full tailwind, and this will cause a bit of consternation back in the peloton. I think they're coming up to the sprint point. It's meant to be at 28 kilometres to go exactly, so it should be on the other side. Well, it's going to be interesting back in the peloton, that's for sure.
It certainly is. I think they've been through it. I think it was the inflatable on the bridge, and they sort of held station, and they've driven straight into our climb. So we are effectively done as far as the intermediate sprint is concerned. It was on the causeway. So climbing we are. I don't think that was a 1 kilometre to go announcement to the intermediate sprint, and there it is. Corin takes it, so he gets 3 bonus seconds as well as his 5 points. Hammerschmidt and Kaspar. So yes, not massively well defined, but we'll take it. It was just a single inflatable at the side of the road, and probably the chap who pumped it up is there in that car. They'll be using that again tomorrow. He's properly tuckered out. Meanwhile, a lot of fresh legs and minds amongst this group. The breakaway have kicked on, and you're going to see potentially some rolls of the dice. Let's see. What's your thinking on this? Is it still too far out, Pippa?
Yeah, it's still 20 kilometres to that loop finishing circuit. You can see Ineos with Luke Platt moving up on the left there. They're just going to re-establish a bit of control here. There's been a slight bit of excitement with that crossing over the water there. It was really exposed, so that's probably why there was a bit of an acceleration in the peloton. But now everybody back to holding the station, just keep position, stay safe basically.
Tobias Lund, speaking after yesterday, just said, well, Viviani was faster, simple as that. But I've got a feeling that this might actually suit him a lot better, Tobias Lund. Let's see. It's not the kind of day for Viviani, but if he does get dragged over and he's got the leader's jersey, the power of the jersey occasionally can count for an awful lot. And he's not a bad climber, Viviani, on his day. There's just some others, a bit like Alexander Kristoff, who was very disappointed yesterday after being dropped off impeccably well by his team. He'll want to pay them back, and I guess that for a power man, he's possibly he's always loved a headwind sprint as Alexander Kristoff, and he might get one today.
Yeah, the problem is that as he gets older, he loses that little bit of zip. So the younger riders, and I'm talking from experience.
Me too.
So he, as you say, I don't think it's going to be hard enough for him. There's the riders coming with a lot kind of more zing to their sprint, whereas as you say, if it was uphill and a real hard day, then Alexander Kristoff would probably be much more of a favourite than these ones were. You think about it, Viviani's been doing the track lately, so they ought to suit him more than Ethan Hayter. So, but we got it all wrong yesterday, so we can easily get it all wrong again today.
Did you see the Hotel Pegasus there? I've actually stayed there. It's very nice. They were having to hold on to the brollies so that they didn't disappear. With the wind blowing like this, there was a danger of them becoming like Mary Poppins and taking off.
So
they got away with it. But the wind really has properly picked up. This is now getting gnarly as indeed Hammerschmidt goes backwards, and we have 2 remaining on the climb It's more than a little gusty.
Yeah, it's always the case when you stay near the coast. There's always that wind coming off the sea. So I was wondering when they were going to go to the little ring here, because it wasn't too steep to start with, but now it looks like you've kind of got that choice of either fully left on the sprocket and use the bigger ones, or go to the little ring. But see Little Trek taking it up with Quinn Simmons protected, so everybody's obviously been told that there might be a little bit of wind and there might be some action here.
Let's see, 41 seconds of the day remaining. 41 seconds of the gap, I should say, but 25.8 kilometres of the day remaining. Here comes the green King of the Mountains jersey that we had yesterday. And it's Trek. This is for Quinn Simmons that suddenly pick it up. Lidl Trek are marshalling, and they've decided to pick up the mantle. Quinn Simmons has got a taste for it today, and those who've been back to the car for bottles have suddenly been caught out. This is Admiral Gourmet. He's got bottles in his pockets. These are for others, and it's suddenly kicked off, and it's because of the wind that we have the action already. So we're off, we're underway, we're at the races.
Yeah, luckily there's been a bit of tailwind to start this climb, and it spurred everybody on. And Gourmet hasn't looked at his road book and realised that there's a climb coming, and he went back for bidons, which is a kind of beginner's mistake.
Well, the crowd's here out in force, and just looking at our two leaders for the time being, and it's already time to check over the shoulders.
Yeah, so you've got Corin and Casper just trying to survive this climb before the peloton scoops them up. I think they know that their time is done. They'll look back on that switchback and seen that Little Trek had taken control of the front of the peloton, and they know the peloton's coming for them.
And they are, and it's Little Trek that are in charge of that, and this is a great drive for Quinn Simmons. Well, if we were thinking about that final little peaklet, I noticed that Alois is also very much minded to have a dig here. This is all good news. It's starting to kick off behind. It's going to be the killing of the breakaway almost by default before potentially they get to the top. We've had a tangle, and this often happens. Riders, they never seem to be too worried about spokes. Just rather angrily just disentangling their steeds and then getting back off and underway. 25 kilometres from home. This is getting busy.
It was. So back there, the yellow Metro rider was Lunardi, who was their sprint option for yesterday. So he's going to be in a bit of trouble if this keeps up.
He is. He had a good finish yesterday, top 5, and he's got to get himself calmed down and back in. Maybe he doesn't need to calm down. Maybe the adrenaline will help. That's the end of our breakaway. Race Radio declaring all together, and it is Little Trek that are basically having a mountaintop lead out here, and it's interesting to see UNOX also getting very much involved. This will be for Christoph. Let's see where the big man is with the blue jersey. He won't be that far behind. He's carrying that blue jersey, but all I can see is Quinn Simmons at the moment, wrestling and harrying. If indeed Christoph is part of the vanguard, and there's no reason to expect why he would not be, doesn't mind a few peaks. This is the more difficult of the two climbs that remain, but there is still that big test with 15 kilometres to go. They all know it's going to happen, and it's largely a downhill run to that peak. And so as a result, Pippa, they want to get over the top of this, use gravity and a lot of impetus to sprint essentially into the foot of the 1600 metre peak that we have at 7%. And when we get to the peak of that, there's still 15 kilometres from home, but it's lively. Yeah,
it's got lively. So we've got Casper insisting a little bit from the break, and it looks like Connor Swift has taken control in front of the peloton. So Little Trek have calmed down just a little in use of taking back the head of the peloton just to settle things down. But it's certainly stretched out. There's about 40 riders in that kind of first section of the group.
So then we've got a little bit of a split on the climb, so there's a regrouping. Now if that is a precursor to what we've got with 15 kilometres to go, and don't forget we've just been over 5.6%, only 800 metres shorter than the climb we've just dealt with, but 7% is the uncategorised climb that they'll be on. They'll be at the peak of it in 8 kilometres time, so they've got to start thinking about the approach to it. We come down towards the coast. This is high-paced right now. As you can see, we're driving down towards the seafront. We won't actually get to it, but we will cut again to another climb. And it'll start to reveal itself pretty soon, quite frankly. DSM getting very busy for Oscar Onley. He's in there. And Kern Farmer. Will this be for Roger Adria, I imagine, today? Ineos Grenadiers with too many options, potentially. Not quite sure where they're going to offer their favour. I think it'll be Ethan Hayter on the final peak that's not categorised. And wait for Mati Mohoric, because here they come, spearing up through the centre. They want something out of today, more than they have been offered so far. Aulus Alouar of Caio Rural is here. That's him surfing the middle line in the bright yellow. He almost looks like the race leader. It's so vivid, quite frankly, the yellow of the Venezuelan champion. But he's a proper skirmisher at moments such as this, and he's got a real pace on him, as you well know from La Vuelta, where he finished runner-up to Jeffrey Soup on stage 7, I think it was. So, down we come. This is free energy at the moment, which will help them when we get to the climb. I've got a feeling that it will be very, very harshly fought, this, because it is that action point we've been waiting for, Pippa.
Yeah, it suddenly got very nervous after that. It gives Antoine Tolhoek for Lido Trek, who did most of the damage there on that climb. And it's kind of reminds everybody that they're in a bike race, and then suddenly there's a number of riders looking a lot more interested in what's happening.
Kaspar taking the main King of the Mountains points. Connor Swift it was that came over second place on that climb. And there is the man in the blue here. And he said, do you mind, I want a bit more protection here. That shows that Alexander Kristoff is absolutely in the vanguard. As we look at the Life on Mars trail, I have no idea what that means. It's the island of Page that we're looking at. Did they do experiments here with potential astronauts? I'm not sure. My imagination now running wild with that title. But anyway, we are on the other side of the moon, apparently. It says some of the stone and the stone features here, offering exquisite views that you'll find nowhere else except on the moon surface. I think they mean it's quite barren, and I think that sounds like a marketing man who thought, look, we've just got rock here, what can we say? Let's say it's like the moon. Why did they mention Mars? Anyway, moon on Mars, take your pick. Today it's time to get busy. You can see Tobias Lund here in the Young Riders jersey, meshed in there with the dark blue of DSM on the left-hand side of your picture. You can see heads up as well, nice and relaxed in his Grenadiers. They've done most of the chasing today. They've succeeded in catching the breakaway. It wasn't really their design. They never really were worried about it. We now worry about everyone as they scream into town and indeed head for this climb. They'll be there in about 3 kilometres time. They will suddenly find themselves with a kick at the backside at 7%. That's actually quite a nasty bite. The road does twist, as you can see. It's being described for you. Also says slippery road surface. That's what engineers put up when the road surface has not been laid correctly. There you go. Oh, there's no need for it. Why would there be? 19.9 kilometres then from home, and they start to look at each other. This is getting edgy, Pippa.
It is. Everybody knows that it's going to have to pay attention with that unknown climb coming. So starting to get in position just in case something happens. The Ineos have got Josh Tarlin on the front. Going back to that, when we saw Kristoff, he actually waved his teammate over so that Ineos could ride in the front.
There's some devilment going on within the pack here, and Alexander Kristoff is the card player at the moment. Will it be an ace he pulls out? I'm not quite sure. Yesterday it wasn't. It was the three of broken hearts, I'm afraid, for Christoph. He came home third. We're slowing down with Tobias Lund of DSM, who wears the white jersey. Christoph is in blue. Viviani is our leader in red. Don't know whether it's a Viviani kind of day. We'll know more once we deal with this peak.
Yeah, I think, we got an indication there of how well Alexander Kristoff is riding, because that climb wasn't that easy. We probably lost 20-odd riders from the peloton. So, and he reappeared near the front, just after the summit, so he couldn't have slid back that far.
Let's see. The wind favours him. He doesn't mind that kind of thing. The threat would be the hill for him, but he's actually dealt with the climb, and I think this hill that is coming up, you can now see it described up ahead of us. There'll be a downhill run to the foot of it, and then it's 7% for 1,600 metres. I think you'd have to be brave to go from this kind of distance, but he's up for it, and Christoph just third in line at the moment. And once again, Luke Rose on the radio, offering up requests. Here's your King of the Mountains man from yesterday. I think he's going to be secure in that. We had 3 climbs yesterday. He did enough, I think, to hold on to it. Won 1 and was second on 2 of those climbs, so should be good for that. Yes, I'll be wearing the jersey again tomorrow, he says. I think he's ordering dinner, to be honest. But anyway, I think he's checking out as to whether it belongs to him. Well, he's did enough to get in the breakaway, and he's had a couple of days of our attention, which is good news.
I think he was one of the casualties of that acceleration from Little Trek, and the group of 20-odd riders that were lost have managed to get back on with this calm before the storm.
It was Antoine Tulloch, wasn't it, that led them back? He'd be caught out himself. Here we go then. Play with that centre line, why don't you, just for now. And they are locked together. They're not going to just amble over it. Come on, somebody must have a go. This is we've been billing this all day, Pippa. What's going on?
Yeah, the thing is, Carlton, that you've sold it to me as a crunch point.
It is.
It could be that they're going to respect what's happened actually on the graphic, and just looks like a pimple. But hopefully, it will turn into something happens there before we just get to the circuit, and it turns into another sprint.
Well, I need Matej Mohoric to go for this, at least to invoke a little bit of pace with his team, so that some of the purer sprinters perhaps are a little bit tuckered out. But it doesn't seem to be the case. We're not there yet. Selling it to myself now. Going around the headland. Come on, let's go climbing, for goodness sake. It peaks with 15 kilometres to go, so we're just about here. Now, is it going to get gnarly? Well, not at this pace, I'm afraid. Oh, does this mean we're going to have a mass sprint at the end of today? Lots of riders out of the saddle, which is suggestive of the percentages suddenly starting to rise up, but nobody's tempted to go long here, Pippa.
No, and we see the 2 Lukes have made it back again, so they were lost about halfway up that last climb, and now they're back on the front, so it tells you that everything's calmed down enough for them to come back and do more work on the front.
Well, I've got to say I'm royally disappointed, as I'm sure some of you have probably got in the biscuits and put the hot tea out of range just in case it could get kicked off. We're above the helicopter. That's the sort of climbing we're doing here, but to be honest, do you think the wind has neutralised some ambitions here?
It might well have done. I think I think we have to remember this is late September, and the candidates for 20 kilometres on your own aren't numerous at this time of year. So you're waiting for the right moments generally, and it is pretty windy, so you'll be discouraged from
Block
attacking
headwind as well.
Yeah, so the thing is, it's kind of gently rolling terrain as well, which is really difficult on your own. So unless you're Remco Evenepoel and you go over all this stuff like it's not there, it does slow you down.
Well, there you are. There's the rest of my climb. I'm disappointed. Can you hear it in my voice? Oh, in fact, we're not quite there just yet. I don't think any of them have probably scoped this, but you just never know. There's certainly plenty who are out of the saddle having to cope with this. I'm not quite sure how wearing it's going to be at this pace, however. A lot of recovery time before we actually get to the line. Mind you, once we go over the top, there's a downhill rush, but the headwind that we had further down this this little peaklet here, I think knocked back quite a few. As you say, you might take a step forward and just billow up like a spinnaker and indeed take the wind that would harry anybody else.
So the kind of only advantage of this type of uphill is the other side will be fairly similar, but you know, obviously it'll be downhill, so then it'll be a quick entrance down onto the circuit. But I imagine all the teams have looked on something like VeloViewer and checked out what that 3 and a bit kilometre circuit is going to be, and they'll have recognised that as maybe more of an opportunity for some kind of attack.
I think so.
But certainly for the moment, everybody's been really cagey about this point in the race.
16k's to go, so still got a kilometre of this climb, and you can see by the trees here how the wind is being described to you. High ball. Oh. Just trying to see who they're calling for. Anyway, they're doing a great job. Nice to see the kids out. And they are just rolling with it. There's Alois, my cheeky side bet for today. I'm going for Alexander Christoph, but I'm ebbing in that regard right now because I was hoping that this would be a bit tougher because he survives this kind of tough terrain, but it's been reasonably easy on everybody. We've got a few spits and spots of rain as well. That could potentially cause some problems, but the sun's still out, so there's a rainbow somewhere. Who's your pick today?
Well, if I say Ethan Hayter like yesterday, he's bound to be...
It'll happen eventually.
Yeah, so it reminds you of those things, you know, when people ask you who it's going to be and you keep saying the same name every day. But yeah, I think... Actually, I'm almost tempted to say Josh Tarling will take a flyer somewhere.
Be nice.
But yeah, let's go with that. Let's say Josh Tarling because he's in really good shape, and if Ineos play it smart and don't actually go for the kind of full lead out and let him go, I mean, who is to take him back?
Well, exactly. If he gets over the top, European time trial champion, as you well know. Yeah. Why should it not be he? Well, 500 metres before we get to the top, and we finally got there. This was more of a climb than the climb that we just had.
So it's definitely like Tour of Ireland, you know. So the unclassified climb is harder than the where they put the man with the flag and the chalk line on the road. Somebody
didn't pay for this climb. There you go. Well, the KOM point. Wasn't it inflatable? So, Ineos Grenadiers, nice long line. The Luke Platt, Aussie champ, is at the front, and here comes everybody else. That's Chris Juul Jensen just getting himself up into position for Jaco Alula. Do you know Campbell Stewart? We spoke about him yesterday. I'm kind of believing more in him than Alexander Christoph after his pace yesterday, and he has not been challenged by this. He's still very much part of the Jaco Alula crew, who are just coming up and sharing shoulders at the moment with Ineos Grenadiers. And I think our race leader Viviani is also within this group, and why should it not be him today, Pip?
I think it'll be a bit. I think it'll be a bit more hectic than yesterday. It depends on the lead out that Ineos can set up, but then if Jaco get involved and actually put Stuart Campbell in a really good position, then he's probably the fastest. But it's all about getting that position right.
I think so. He does great lead out work for others, but this time he's going to be led out by Lucas Postelberger and Amund Grøndal Janssen. So let's see how they go. And it is high paced off this peak. Now this means that the kilometres are going to rush away from us. They'd better make sure that there's no touches of wheels down there. Occasionally you get it with some of the there's a there's a variation in experience within the teams. Let's leave it at that, shall we? And by that I mean that you can get a few knocks. You get it at the very highest level, of course, as well. We got a knock late on yesterday with 6 kilometres to go, and Bahrain victorious do not want the same thing to happen to Mati Mohoric. He should have had a big option today. I think he may well rue not going earlier, but hey, let's see. It's now going to come down to a full-on bunch sprint. I guess a short day such as this, they've gone for marshalling it, and as you were saying, Pippa, it's late on in the season. There's some tired legs and minds out there, but they're dialed in at DSM, aren't they? Look at that lineup.
Yeah, they've got to keep Oscar Only in a decent position, and at the same time looking after their sprinters as well. So they've got 2 jobs to do, and they can do it with with one set of riders. So keep Lund there and keep Oscar Only out of trouble.
Lund's got a great option. He just ran out of legs yesterday at the very last, but there he is in the white jersey. They're looking after Oscar Only for the overall classification. Meanwhile, you look at Ineos Grenadiers lined up neatly. Ethan Hayter's sitting on second wheel at the moment. So I'm just looking. Connor Swift and Magnus Sheffield at the end of that line. So I think it's first and foremost about looking after Magnus Sheffield by the looks of things for the overall. And look at the pace that's invoked now as they come off this peak. We're not hanging around here at all.
No, back to 60 kilometres an hour, so which is predictable given that the other side it looked pretty steep and long. So as we've went along the coast, it's went up and down exactly the kind of same way on each side. So these kilometres should tick past really quickly, heading towards that circuit which we're going to take to finish the race.
Within the circuit, by the way, there is a little step up, about 2.7 kilometres to go. It goes uphill, little plateau, and then downhill to the Flamme Rouge. The circuit is not entirely flat, so if you look at the terrain that's up ahead of us, you get the idea. So you have a little kick up, pretty similar to this that we're just about to experience, with about 2.8 kilometres to go. They will get a preview of it because we see the entire circuit once. We'll see in fact we'll see a little bit more than that. We join the circuit at about 30% of it to complete. So we'll do a third of the circuit, then a full circuit, just because of the way we join it. I'm interested to watch what Cairo are doing here, because Barcelo and Yuri Leitao is working for Aldis Alois, the Venezuelan champion. I thought it might be the other way around, to be honest, because Leitao looked to be their chosen man yesterday. It could be that they've switched, and it could be that Alois does it all on his own. He's given to doing that on occasion. Look at the pace that's being invoked here by Uno X. This is for Alexander Kristoff in the blue jersey. He's got good lead out here with Jonas Abrahamsson and Lewis Bendixen. I don't think they're going to go for Bendixen today. It might be a sensible thing for them to do, but the blue jersey is clearly protected here. He's certainly been vocal enough today. He's obviously up for it, is Alexander Kristoff. The golden shoulders here on the right-hand side of your screen is Luke Plapp, as we come into Zurich and this little island resort with the sleeping shacks there. I know, who'd have thought? And I've no idea what that looks like. A concert area over the water. Hey, why not? Cooler over the water. The time in Funafuti Atoll was exactly that. 14 months. 10 kilometres to go, and here we are back downstairs, and it is still extremely lively. Nobody wants to touch your wheels at a moment like this, but the road's so busy it could happen, Pippa. Yeah,
it could, and we're just wondering how long Luke Plapp's going to last at 60 kilometres an hour here. So he's probably got another couple of minutes before Ethan Hayter takes over. If Ethan Hayter's going to be sacrificed for the Viviani possibility, or whether they're just going to keep Hayter there just to keep him out of trouble for like he got involved in yesterday.
9.4 kilometres to go. Yola Cometa in the centre of the road in their sort of palish blue, working for Giovanni Lonardi, who yesterday finished in 5th place. Mirko Maestri is the lead-out man for them. Kern Farmer, a little bit quiet just for the time being. They're thinking the long game for Roger Adria in this race. I don't think they'll muster it or mix it with the sprint, but strange things occasionally do happen. Yuri Petrus is the man for ATT Investments. He'll be going freestyle. He's just off your screen at the moment, but we'll start moving up and trying to hobo on somebody's wheel. That's likely to be Tobias Lund by the looks of things. Pavel Bittner will be the man who leads out, the man from DSM in the dark blue. You know all about Bahrain Victorious, and Mate Mohoric wants something from today. Yesterday, touch of wheels, down he went, lost 48 seconds. Needs the win. Don't think it's going to come his way, but it might do, and if it does, that will be some kind of balm upon the wound in a certain way. Just looking at Alexander Kristoff, and I'm just wondering whether indeed he is going to be leading out today. Actually acting as sweeper at the moment is Ben Dixon, so possibly not. Jonathan Bramson will be the lead-out man first to go, to peel off, and then Ben Dixon should come through and help out Alexander Kristoff. He's on his back wheel at the moment, which is a bit of a strange one, unless Kristoff is going to do the job for Ben Dixon today, having run out of power yesterday. Wise heads sometimes, and indeed brave as well, to just say, look, it's not going to be my day. 7.6 kilometres. We're nearly on the circuit here, Pippa.
Yeah, we nearly are. And I just noticed here that DSM had used Oscar only on the front, so they were on the left-hand side of the grid, the right-hand side of the road, and Oscar only was riding. He was taking win for the sprinters, so they're not too concerned about this finishing circuit breaking things up.
Well, let's see whether indeed that's the case. We're coming into the circuit very shortly. You'll start to see the markers. In fact, we come in on a straight road, and the circuit will be joining us, if you like, from our right-hand side, facing this way. So we're not quite on it just yet. We're about 600 metres to go before we're on the circuit, and everyone wants to be in a decent place by the time we get there. This almost looks like an athletics track sprint that's going on at the moment. That's Keplinger just getting himself up to the fore. So Bahrain Victorious have got all kinds of ideas about how today is going to work out. Yuri Petrus has actually now moved to the centre of things. Quinn Simmons just coming up on the outside. Not quite sure whether his opportunity today, it's just about getting, I think, to the 3 kilometre mark safely for him. It should be ours, Aberastori or Tinton Teutenberg, but it depends on how tuckered out everybody is. Late in the season, Quinn Simmons is one of those guys who can stand up like a prize fighter. So, into town we come, rather fetching. We'll see more of the town, I think, after the finish, because we should be staying downstairs. They can't decide which side of the road to go for at the moment, Pippa.
No, they can't, and there's definite team lead-outs happening there. So Bahrain have just burned through one rider, and they've got Mate Mohoric third in line there. So everybody's kind of fighting to hold this position until they kick onto the circuit and get an idea of how this is going to turn out.
Pippo Fortin is trying to move into position. He's in the very loud coloured Maloya Push Bikes jersey. You'll see it, and here is your first move, first roll of the dice, just to make sure. This is bragging rights. It's about terrain at the moment, and it's the shortest way through, perhaps, if they've done their homework. Let's see. And it was Bahrain Victorious doing a very, very good job of that. They took the slightly shorter way through. We're on the circuit right now, and indeed we'll see all of this again. So settle yourselves down, why don't you? Luke Platt really absolutely on a flyer, and big pickup as well by Uno X, wanting to make sure that they have got some bragging rights, and Alexander Kristoff has just been disengaged from his teammates just for the time being. Another turn coming for you right now. This will have been through the Flamme Rouge, so this should open up to our start-finish straight, essentially. Looks like the Flamme Rouge is going to be inflated while we are indeed on course. So this is the highway that will lead us to the line, and as you can see, it picks up. So this is where we just have this little rise towards the line. We've actually come down that step that I was telling you about, and this is your rise. So this is 500 meters. You don't quite get to see it. It's just the shortest way through is going to be on the left-hand side of the road. And you'll see that teams want to go over to that side. Quinn Simmons is just backing out of it, keeping it sensible. You'll get a good description of the turn in a few moments' time, and there it is. So with about 200 metres to go, the road brings itself round to the left-hand side. Those barriers may well be tested. Let's hope everyone stays safe. This is the intermediate sprint, by the way, so bonus seconds up for grabs there. But now we have a full lap. They hear the bell. For whom does it toll? We shall find out a little bit later, but they are now engaged in our circuit. First technical corner just after the finish line. They won't have to do this one again. Only one time of asking this time. Now, it does start to waver, and it gets very, very serious here. We're only 4 kilometres from home. There is the first of the big corners that you have to master coming up in 900 metres time here, Pippa.
Yeah, so this is where it goes gradually uphill for about a kilometre until the next corner, and this is the tailwind section as well. So potentially there could be a bit of action, but it looks like Ineos are going to kind of close everything down. So Barry on one side and Magnus Sheffield on the other. I noticed Ethan Hayter there was quite interested in taking the bonus seconds that are available, even though he's strangely out of the GC. So maybe he's thinking about the points competition if he can get back into a decent position.
Roger Adria cleverly got his nose up. That is his wheel crossing the line in second place there, so 2 bonus seconds for Adria. He's going for the overall for Kern Farmer. I'd like to see that. That was good ambition, good thought. Meanwhile, we're running out of asphalt here. Let's get back to the race, and here we are, 3.3 kilometres. They've just done the climb. We're on a little plateau at the moment, but it will indeed drop down. In fact, we're just about to come to the last little step up. Beg your pardon. Here it is now. So they make this turn, and then we start to climb just a little bit. It's cut into the hillside, as you can see, and suddenly this will have a sort of slightly draggy effect. And there's a few have been squeezed out of this. As you can see, Bahrain victorious, doing a nice job. Ineos Grenadiers just fading into this one now, and also just picking up the paces. Uno Expo Cycling cannot see Alexander Kristoff, I must admit. Oh, indeed, he's there. Just screened by indeed Ineos Grenadiers. Here, coming up and streaming up at the moment, Travis Steadman is there for Q365, the South African champion, but also is Aulus Alois for Cairo Ral. He's just streamed by the boys in silver just for the time being. They're showing a good deal of ambition. I like that. Vosta ATS have a man spare as well for this job, but we haven't lit up the afterburners just yet. And here come Team DSM with Tobias Lund in a very good position. He's wearing the white jersey. Look out for the blue jersey. And indeed, the red jersey there of Viviani is in a great position. He's got 4 men in front of him, Viviani, if he wants to extend his lead in this competition. Or is he just acting as a sweeper for the time being? It's Connor Swift whose wheel he's on at the moment. That's suggestive that it's going to be about Viviani today. A few others just mixing it and moving up. 2 kilometres to go here, Pippa.
Yeah, so Q36.5 trying to keep Nicola Barasini in a decent position going into the sprint, because he was actually 7th yesterday, so they're hoping to do something a bit better than they could achieve yesterday. But it's going to be difficult for them to do this amount of movement. And Magnus Sheffield looks so comfortable in the second wheel there that as soon as the Q36.5 rider swings over, Sheffield's going to take it up for Ineos again.
Big right-hander, and they're through this right now. There is another turn to take just after the Flamme Rouge. This is where we joined the circuit a little bit earlier on, and it is now that Jaco Alula looking in a very strong position at the moment. This is for Campbell Stewart. Lost a little bit of ground perhaps as we came through, but Stewart's clearly up for it, and Viviani knows all about that. In fact, they're mixed and moshed together as teams, and Campbell Stewart just slightly out of position, wants to get himself back in there, does so, and he's got help, which is great news for him. Now then, let's see. Postelberger and Janssen are there. So is Campbell Stewart, was so fast finishing yesterday. And now we are now beyond the Flamme Rouge. It starts to pick up. Don't forget, we've got that left-hander at the very last. Now, where is Christoph? You haven't seen him revealed to us just yet, but he's in the mosh, I can tell you. And there's a few wheels as well that are being followed here. Campbell Stewart's now isolated from his teammates. He's staying on the back wheel here of Alexander Christoph in the blue jersey. Lining up through the front centre goes Mohoric, likes a ramp, and it may well be that he owns this one, and he's looking very handy for this. Oh, he most certainly is. Big lead out coming up as well for Alois. That is Leitao, I think, that's lighting it up. Alois on his back, and he's going to take it himself by the looks of things. Is Kai Roral going to come through here? Viviani's going to try and nick it at the very last. Oh, what a surprise at the very last here. Yuri Leitao, all as Alois thought was the chosen man, but Leitao does a job. That was brilliant. Great result for Kai Roral in this kind of company. Well, chapeau to them. Kept it sensible.
Yeah, well, that was a bit of a surprise. Kai Roral winning a sprint, you know, at this level. The big thing is that Uniwick's got that totally wrong at the end. You know, so they left Alexander Christoph on the front 400 meters to go uphill into the wind. You know, so you saw him looking back there, hesitate, and as soon as he did that, he was swamped and never got out again. And Elia Viviani appeared at the last minute, so hiding right up until the last 100 meters. But
I'm so pleased. The Portuguese here taking it. Yuri Leitao was boxed out of it yesterday, but Aulas Alois drew the eye for this team. But that's a big scalp for them, Kai Roral. Well, we talked about how a difficult ramp can be mastered, and that was about timing. It was perfectly done.
Yeah, he got that perfectly. Now everybody kind of focused on what the World Tour teams were doing, and Kai Roral able to take advantage of that hesitation in there just before the line.
They've had a very good end to the season, you know, with Alois coming so close in La Vuelta, and now Yuri Leitao laying it on the line. Don't be surprised if he pops up again in Zagreb. We've got a few lumpy days before we get there. Alois will have a chance to Ozalsh as well on Saturday. But Kai Roral, that's big scalps for them. Viviani will be pleased by his finish, I must admit, as well, and should stay in that leader's jersey. Let's have a look at it. Pippa Talk is in. Well, there is Alois. I've got a feeling that he may well have been the default, but he backed in, did a great job for his teammate. Leitao went for it. Here's Viviani just coming up and over the top, as you can see, of Alexander Christoph. Tobias Lund was there as well on the barriers in the white jersey, but on the throw it was all for minor positions because one man had just gone and stolen it. It was Timton Teutenberg for Lidl Trek, by the way, who was in the frame. And look at this. They're all looking at each other, but there's the gap that's just starting to open up. Maybe there was a little bit of defensiveness going on, and there's no drive here either from Aulas Alois. He just kept others at bay, made sure that Tobias Lund was going to be blocked and out of position. That was great teamwork by the Venezuelan champion to allow his teammate to hug the barriers and indeed hold on for victory. Clever riding by Kai Roral. That was impressive.
Yeah, that certainly was. That was all because the Venezuelan champion let the wheel go just at that crucial moment inside the 200 meters, and nobody spotted it until it was too late. Viviani was able to come out of that little pack and come round Christoph, but nobody else seemed to notice that Leitao was gone by then. I don't think he can quite believe that that happened so easily.
That was amazing. I don't think he can either. You saw the disquiet there of Tobias Lund suddenly finding himself behind the Venezuelan champion. Teammate, of course, of the day's winner, Leitao. Viviani picks up more bonus seconds. He'll still be our leader. Alexander Christoph finishing in third ahead of Timton Teutenberg. Lonardi, Andriessen, Govica, Forten, Proc and Alois, teammate of the winner. Lots of big names missing from that. I must say, Tobias Lund will feel, I admit, a little bit aggrieved. But, you know, it's a gunslinger's game, isn't it? And these guys hit the target.
Yeah, so the big problem is they got pinned on the inside on the barrier. So Lund and Christoph kind of got caught out being in the wrong place at the wrong time, which in a sprint like that you never recover from.
Well, today we had ourselves a breakaway. It formed early, and we had some beautiful countryside along the way, but we were destined to have ourselves a sprint. We thought they'd be tempted by the terrain to go early. Some will be ruining the fact that perhaps they did not. 4 up the road then, Ineos doing much of the chasing, and Ethan Hayter not being allowed to meerkat at the back. He was part of the phalanx that we were wondering who they were running for. In the end, it was to be Elia Viviani, because the terrain was not that sapping upon the sprinters. And by the time we came in off the high plateau into town, we were racing. Well, lumpy terrain, including a peak with just 15 kilometres to go, had a moderately wearing effect, I think, on the pack, but really everyone was back together and ready for the sprint at the end of the day. Well, we were convinced that the big names would actually boss the day, but in the end we were to get ourselves a surprise. CRO with Yuri Leitao delivering. Well, this is the area they call the Moon. It's a trail that I think you can ride it or walk it. To be honest, I think I'd probably want it to be over reasonably quickly. Seems a bit too far away from a sandwich for my liking, but anyway. Here's your overall classification. Viviani leading Yuri Leitao by 6 seconds. Leitao not scoring bonus seconds yesterday, but 10 today. So the margin of Viviani's advantage stays at 6. Alexander Kristoff, I think it's 4 at the beginning of the day, in 3rd place overall. But 2 good days for Viviani. He'd have liked another win. Here's the points classification. So he'll be lending out that jersey once again. It'll be Alexander Kristoff that indeed sports it for him. That's your points classification. Leitao moving into 4th place in that. Change in the King of the Mountains classification? No, because Sharan yesterday was got enough points just to hold in abeyance those who would challenge today. There's 1 less categorised climb today, so Sharan stays that leader overall in the King of the Mountains. And Andresen of DSM is our young rider classification leader. Owns that jersey. Sorry, this is Tobias Lund. He will write that again tomorrow. So Tobias Lund Andresen. So, sorry for the confusion. I should say Lund up there, just to be kind to us, but it's the way of it. Just as Simon Philip Yates about how names carry. I actually saw him listed as S. Philip once, but anyway, there you go. So, what have we got tomorrow? The Optaya and a real rolling day. A bit gnarly for us. Should be a different complexion entirely, Pippa.
It should be. I know we got to see a bit of GC action as well. Maybe not a day for the sprinters entirely. It'll be probably a stage where it's survival of the fittest. It won't be completely manic end to the day. Should be a little bit more interesting. Probably quite traditionally in break goes and takes up a few of the bonus points, takes over the climbs that they've put on the way, and then get reeled in. It seems to be a bit of a traditional thing so far in this race, but hopefully tomorrow the terrain stirs things up a little bit more.
I hope so. They're climbing out the back door, which usually helps. And there is the biggest peak of tomorrow comes early, after about 35 kilometres. And then it's a downhill run. So it's suggestive that if you've got some ambitions to be in the breakaway, tomorrow could indeed be that. That looked like an oligarch's boat parked up, but I might be wrong. Maybe that's why camera's averted. I'm not quite sure. Has it been found? That's certainly big enough. It's probably a Coast Guard. Who knows? Anyway, there's not much else here. So tomorrow we go racing again, stage 3. This is tripping along quite nicely, Pippa.
It is, you know, the stages aren't too long. Nice scenery. Quite interesting finals and a little bit of action now and again. So it looks like a really lovely race to be part of.